Okay. Good morning, everybody. Hopefully, I'll wait just a second to make sure it's streaming. Looks like it is on my side. Maybe. All right. Is it working? All right, well, it says it's streaming on my end. Hopefully it is. Good morning, everyone. My name is Samantha Mirabal. I'm with Melco's Applications team, and today we're going to be going over some questions that you might have on DesignShop. So if you have any, feel free to type them in on the comment feed. Oh, recover web page. Looks like the web page crashed, which is why I can't see it. Apologize for that. Give me a second. Okay, so it is working. I'm trying to make sure I can see the comments. Almost. At least I figured out why it wasn't updating. All right, well, I still can't see the comments, so hopefully the screen will decide to come back. So as I was saying, my name is Samantha, and I'm with the Applications team, and this is where we try to get together on a weekly basis to answer any questions you might have. So to start off with, I have a few questions that were sent in. So we'll start with those. Good. So it is working. All right, good morning, everybody. Great, I can see the comments now. Fantastic. So I'll start off with the questions that were sent in ahead of time, and we'll start with those. Any other questions, feel free to type them in. I'll try to keep an eye on the comment feed over to my left, so if you see me kind of looking over, that's what I'm doing. All right, so first question we have is, I'm very new. How do I cancel a job in the middle of stitching? All right, so that basically, if you're running a job, let's say, like in this case, ran a hat and forgot to flip the design over, so now it's sewing upside down. Well, one, you can finish it, it's kind of funny, and then put something on the back, like turn me over if you find me this way, or something like that. Turn it into a gag gift. But to cancel it, if you just want to bail, if you look on the OS, so this is on the operating system, right up here, you'll see there's where you'd load the design and all that. There are two buttons. You have the return to origin, which is this one, and then that button right there resets the design. All right, so if you click reset design, wherever this, let's say I'm sewing this design right here, and it sewed out, and this was the stitch it stopped on. All right, so right where those blue things cross. So if I then click reset design, what's going to happen is my design is going to reposition, so the center of it is wherever the needle is. So it was up in this corner, so it repositions like this. Well, if that's not what you want it to stay centered on your hoop or wherever you left it, before hitting reset, make sure you click on return to origin, and that will return to the center of the design so that when you reset the design, it stays where it was. Okay, so that's how you would reset the design. Good morning, Gina. All right, so that's how you would cancel the job in the middle. Here, I need more detailed info on how to do a design on several pieces with each one having a different name below the design. All right, so that's what that's referencing is group names. So there are some videos out there, so you can always look those up, but let's go see how that works. So I probably should just create this from scratch so you can see it. But we'll start with this. So let's say I took that, whatever logo you have, and you added a name underneath it. All right. So from here, what you would do is go into your properties. So the first four color changes you can see down the side are my, is the logo, the bird in this case. So if I double click on the lettering, over here, you'll see there's a feature called Group Names. When you enable that, what this will do is when you load the design to the machine, it'll actually start changing those names. So, for instance, I've got four names here, and let me remove them so you can see. So let's say I wanted to add Sam. So I type them in here, and from there, I would just move it over, and these are the names that are selected. Okay. So my available names are over here. These are the names that are going to be included in the file. Down here, it's the output. So how is it going to sew out? Okay, so I have it doing the design, then the name, and then it's going to repeat. So what does that mean? It's going to sew the first four colors, which is the design. Then it's going to show the name, the first name on the list, so Chris. And then it's going to repeat. So it's going to go back and do this logo again, and then the next name on the list, Richard. It'll keep on cycling through until it gets through all those. So it's going to do the logo, a name, and then it's going to go back to a logo, the next name, logo, next name, and so on and so forth. Okay, so when you do that, notice it's only showing one name on this file. That's the OFM. If I save this off as an EXP, so I'm going to call it Group Names EXP. And then I'll open that up so you can actually see what the group names is. Oh, that's fantastic. Apparently I broke it. All right. I'm just going to create it. Oops. All right, so Sam, group names, enable, add a few names. Adam, move it over. Select it, move it over. There we go. I need more than one though, otherwise this example will not help you any. All right. So I've got two names. Just make sure I have them both. Yep, both names are there. I need a design, so I'm going to insert. Let's do on the C drive, designs, and I'm just going to insert that guy. Okay, so I've got it showing the design, then the names, delete this thing. So basically I'm generating it from scratch this time. All right, so file, save as, group, file OFM. Save as, DST, where's the DSTs? Okay, so let's open up that DST I just created and notice what it did. It's got 10 color changes, whereas on the OFM, it was just the 5. And that's because of how I set up this group names right here, by telling it to do design, name, and repeat. So looking at the DST, just to show you the difference, it will show the first, shows my logo, that's those first 4 color changes. Then it shows my first name. So if I turn this all off so you can see how it runs. So you would run through your colors, you'd show the first name. When you're programming the machine, you would program 5 color changes and then a hold, and then apply OK. So what happens is it will keep on cycling through those colors until it finishes. All right, so the first 4 are going to be your design. That would ideally be the same colors across, right? So in this case, it'd be whatever you program for those first 4 colors, and then your text is going to be whatever color you program the text in. When you put a hold, that allows the machine to stop. You take that garment off the machine, put the next one on, and when you hit go, then it's going to sew the next one. So it's a new garment, so nothing's been sewn. So it's going to sew your logo. Again, those 4 colors, and then a name. And it'll keep on repeating through there, and it stops by that hold in your color settings so that it will allow you to go put the next garment on. Okay, so that's what the group names does for you. You can set it up different ways where it only shows the logo once and then it repeats a bunch of names. Maybe you're just doing names, so it's just a stack of names. I think you can even make it do different files. I always stack them because I find it easiest. So it's stacked like this. I run the, if it's a 5 color design that's repeating, I program the 5 colors and call it done. All right, so that's your group names. Are there any other questions on that? I don't see any typed in, I don't think. Maybe, let's see. All right, so next. I'm trying to tweak a design going stitch by stitch and I'm getting a mess. If I just need to change a few points, how do I do it? All right, I'm not quite sure I understand this, but I think you're talking about expanded point editing. So expanded point editing is when you're working with, so let me open up that DST file, or let me open up a file. So I've got this one day as an EXP. All right, so that means it's not wireframe based, it's just expanded. It's stitch by stitch. All right, so when you're working with those, how do you navigate, see the stitches and then navigate through them? Well, here, if you select this expanded you want to work with, and right up here you'll see expanded stitch. What is that? Expanded point edit or expanded editing mode. There you go. So now you can see the little dots where all the needle penetrations are. Well, if you left click on one of those, you'll see now that's selected, so I can left click and drag that one. Okay, and you can do it one by one. But what if you click it and that's not the one you want and you're having a hard time finding it? Well, if you hit your left and right arrows on your keypad, you'll actually navigate through. So I'm just holding it down so you can see that thing bouncing. And that goes step by step through. Okay. So that's where you find how you navigate through. Once you have it selected, you can move it, or if you zoom in, you can actually add stitches too by left clicking, and that added a stitch right here. Now, this is kind of a tedious way to go through doing editing because, one, you got to be careful that you're not making the stitches too close together, things like that. But you can stitch by stitch go through them by selecting one stitch, moving it to where you want it to go, adding additional stitches by adding a left click and clicking it on there. So you can click around as much as you want, moving stitches, adding stitches through here. And like I said, just to navigate through them, I do your left and right arrow, and that will kind of toggle through the different points. See that? It moves around. All right. Another question we had was, why is it putting an auto trim when everything is connected correctly? All right, so first off, what is that even talking about? So I was sent an example, so I'm going to open that one. It's here somewhere. There it is. All right. So I'm going to open this, and let's look down here. So on this guy, you'll see that this column, it starts down here, it ends up here. Your next column, it starts where that crosshair is, and then it works its way down. There's a stop. Now you'll see there's an auto trim right here. All right. I don't know about you, but I certainly don't want to trim in the middle of a letter. Right? I would want it to sew this entire letter, and then if it has to trim, do a trim then, but let's not trim in the middle of it. So, okay, that's odd. It's putting a trim there. But if you look at the next element, you'll see it's starting really close to where the previous one ended. So the green circle is where the element I have selected is starting. That crosshair is where the previous element, number 45, ended. All right, so how do we fix this? Well, I'm going to select all the elements just by selecting that entire color. If you right click on it and go to the properties, down here under the tie in and tie off is why we are having that issue. Right here it's 5 points, which is really small. So how you look at this when this is turned on your auto trim, where one element ends to where the next one starts, if that distance is bigger than whatever number you have typed here, it's going to do a trim. All right, 5 points is really tiny. That's less than the size of a needle, a 7511 needle. All right, so it's tiny. So because of that, it's doing trims where we don't want them. So if you want to leave it as that tiny number, you would have to be overly exact with making sure your start point and stop point are on top of each other. And, you know, it's a little tedious that way. The faster way would just be to select your stuff, go to properties, on your tie-in and tie-offs, make that bigger. The default of the software is 64. When you're digitizing like this, 64 is fine because it's all connected. But I would suggest, notice when I update the auto trims, all those trims in here went away now. So now everything will sew continuously because it's start, stop as you go. What I was saying about those auto trims, if you're one who does not like to see connectors between text or between elements, 64, which is the default on the software, I think is large. You know, it's a pretty big jump stitch or connector stitch. So I prefer closer to 20 to 30 points, because if it's less than 20 or 30, I like 20 points. I know some other people like 30. But if it's smaller than that, no one's going to notice it anyway. So I usually just leave, 20 points or less, leave the connector. If it's bigger than 20 points, trim it out because they're too visible. My personal preference. There's no right or wrong. It's what looks good to you. Okay, so, but that's how you would get rid of those connectors through there. Now, the other thing I would say is here, there's no tie-ins or tie-offs selected. I would highly recommend turning on your tie-ins and tie-offs, because that is what's going to be the difference between things knotting and staying together versus falling apart in the wash over time. Unless you're doing manual tie stitches, which not many people do, I would really recommend doing these. That'll do a tie-in stitch when needed, so that way if you're trimming out your connector stitches, you don't have to worry about things coming undone. And particularly if you set it to always, you know, it's again personal preference. I think most people use only when necessary. That way, you know, if it can keep sewing and leave the connector, it will, and it will only do your tie-offs when necessary versus on every letter, regardless of there being a trim or not. Okay, so those are your tie-in and tie-offs. What other questions did I have? All right, so we talked about those. That one was my example there. All right, so there was a question that was typed in of give us some tips on embroidering tiny text and not micro fonts. So I would highly recommend, if you haven't seen these things, let me show you where they all are, because there's a lot of really good resources out there that have gone into a lot of detail on small text. I'll pull up some of them in a bit, but just to show you, right here, I guess I could actually go show you how to find this so you don't have to work. Let's do that. So if I go to melco-service.com, make it big on this screen. All right, so if I go here, right over here, there's this FAQ section. If you haven't ever played with it, do so. There's a lot of good info out there for you. All right, so here, if I type in small lettering, right here, will take you to, you know, some general guidance on it. There's a really good document that goes into a lot of detail about how you actually digitize for small lettering. You know, what size stitches, how to do the different lettering to make sure the stitches actually stand out, burying things, whatnot. So there's some good settings in there you can review. There's a really detailed 45-minute video that Scott did a while back that is excellent on there. So you can watch that. He goes into a lot of detail. The tie-in and tie-offs. So all of these are good resources for you, okay, on your small videos or small lettering. There's also on, let's see. Actually, I think, can I get to it from here? No. All right. So on the Facebook presentations, I think they're up here. Nope. Oh well. I forget where they are. I'm sure someone will post the link after I'm done here. But there is also a list of all the DesignShop talks and the different things that are included on them. I'll find the link and post it in the comments. But on July 19th, if you go find that YouTube, it's on YouTube or on Facebook. The one that we did there talks about small lettering in quite some detail. So you have that. So those are where you can find a lot of resources already that cover this. Small lettering is always a fun challenge. If you look at, where's my stuff? Over here. Let me find it. Maybe. There it is. So some of these are things Scott had sent me pictures of, just showing you can do really small text nice and clean. It's all a matter of how you do the digitizing. So a lot of this has been covered. It really comes down to using the right needles, the right thread, and making sure you have all the settings correct, set up for success there. I'm not seeing any additional comments coming in, so if there are any questions, feel free to type them in. Okay. Some of the things to look at is make sure you make things a little bit thicker than they need to be on the screen. So when it sews out, it's almost too thick on your screen, but it'll sew out how you actually want it. So by adding some pull offset that's in the settings, it's better to, oh, that's a loaded question, Travis, but okay. I'll get there in a second. So make sure you're using the style 1 tie-offs. That's because they're more in line. The style 5, which I personally like a lot, it's a big X, so it's a lot more visible, and it can actually kind of ruin the look of small lettering and small fonts, so it's better to use a style 1 type lettering. There are a lot of settings here you can see by using the built-in fonts. This isn't a micro font. This is just changing the regular industry script font to be able to sew this out. Okay, so what the settings were, it's using a thinner thread. So yes, you can change the density of a pre-digitized font. I'll show you that in a second. Well, I guess it depends on what you mean by pre-digitized. Digitized within DesignShop or one you bought? Maybe you can clarify that. Well, so down here, what you'll see is when you're using thinner thread, the presentation art has this in earlier that I skipped through, but you have to decrease your density so you have more stitches in the to fill it in, because the thread's thinner, so you need stitches closer together. So you've got to decrease your density some. Where do you find this document? I believe it was put in the backup files for the 719 Facebook. So this document should be there. I assume they'll put it up with this one as well. All right, so this is just showing you some of the different settings by using a style 1 knot, making sure you use pull offset, and the different underlays, changing the stitch length so that you get a better coverage, if you will, of the stitches, and you don't have the underlay sticking out from under. Oh, my children's school is calling. That's lovely. Make sure you do it manually. So the other thing to look at is, you know, opening up, enlarging the holes on small lettering. So if you're digitizing manually, you know, making the gaps larger so that it doesn't close up. Good morning, Susan. There's a lot of this we've covered, like it was in the July one, so go check that out. Look at Scott's video. But, you know, if you've looked at that and you're still not sure, let's see what else we can answer. So this document is out there. A lot of this info is actually in that document that I showed you where it was. Okay, so be sure to check those out. I mean, small lettering can be a challenge, but it's really, you know, once you get it, it makes a lot of sense. At least it does to me. So how can you there was a question typed in, how can you increase the density of pre-digitized fonts, one that you purchased? Okay, there's not a good way. I mean, that's kind of the answer. Let me show you what I mean by that. Pre-digitized fonts, usually when you buy those, you end up getting them as these. Here, let me go find one. I bought a ton at one point. Let's see, things I've bought. A, B, C, fonts, where are they? There, fonts. I don't know, pick one. Let's see, that one. So when you buy fonts that are pre-digitized and they're not digitized as OFAs, you end up with things like this, where every single letter is its own DST file. So to use them, you have to input them one at a time. So you would insert, go find it, and of course, I canceled rather than using, so now I've got to go find it again, sorry. Okay, fonts. Oh, I don't know. Let's do that one. That's an ugly font. Oh well. All right. So you bring in one letter at a time, and they're different sizes, and then you've got to worry about lining them up and getting them kerned right. And it's kind of a tedious activity. When you're working with these, to change their densities, you're limited in what you can do. So you can right click and you can come down here to scale, and under scale, this is where you would mess with your densities and your pull compensations and things like that. So if I add 1 point of pull comp and I apply that, notice the whole letter got a little bolder. Okay, so that will change your pull comp. Down here we can change our densities. So if I change my column density to 120, notice I added a lot more stitching on there than was there to begin with. So just to do that again on this other letter, right click, scale. Down here I can either add pull comp, but if I like the pull compensation, I just want more stitches, more dense, more thread, I can change that to 120, and now I have a lot more stitches on there. Okay, so you can do it that way. You can also convert to wireframe. You got to be careful when you do that because it's not always a perfect conversion when you do that. You'll end up with approximations of the curves that are straight lines. You'll have densities change. So you'll often find yourself having to do a lot more modifications when you're converting to wireframe just to get it back to the same condition. But you can mess with them here by changing the columns. If it had a fill in it, it would also allow you to change the fill densities. Okay. Travis had asked, where's a good place to buy fonts? I don't know. I know where I buy fonts every now and then, but I quit buying fonts a long time ago because it's hard to find them in OFAs. So I know Melco sells some OFAs, and those are keyboard accessible ones. If not, I tend to buy ones that are BX ready fonts. I've got them from Jolson Designs and some others. Sometimes they work great, sometimes not so much, but at least with the BX ready fonts, I can type them out using the Embrilliance and then save it off as a DST, bring it into DesignShop, and just all that is not something I enjoy doing, so I tend to use the fonts that are built into DesignShop or to digitize my own. So just because I like it. So let's see. I don't know of where to buy fonts. I guess that's the bottom line question. All right. Any other questions? Let's see. Oh, where did my PowerPoint go? All right. I think that was all. That's all that I had that was sent to me ahead of time, and I don't see any others typed in. So if there's no other questions, I'll hang on a second to see if anyone chimes in before I get off. But remember, we do this on a weekly basis. Well, I don't think we're doing it over Thanksgiving, so that week we'll be on a break. But feel free to ask your questions. We want you to be successful with it. So if I don't know the answer, we'll find the answer for you and get back to you. You can email applications@melco.com, and the applications team will get your email and either add it to the questions here or email directly back to get you an answer. And have fun. Hope this was helpful for you. Again, my name is Samantha, and I will talk to you guys next week. All right. Have a good one.